Now let me consider the case of basis risk. Now basis risk flows because sometimes the asset that we are hedging is not exactly the asset that is the underlying for the future contract. Sometimes there's a difference in the timing of the contract and the time of the delivery of the asset. Sometimes there may be hedger will be uncertain about the timing at which he has to take the delivery of the asset. In such a scenario, these type of the risks that emerge are known as basis risk. Now, the first type of the basis risk is that the asset whose prices are to be hedged may not be same as the underlying asset of future contract. So essentially this is a case when the underlying when the asset of whose prices were hedging, for it the futures contract are not available. Say for example we are going to hedge the prices of, say for example, corn, but however the futures of the corn are not available. So in this sense, the if I am hedging, I will take the near possible asset. Say for example I'm going to take the wheat, which is somehow exactly that of the corn, for because the futures are available on the wheat, so I will take the nearest possible asset that is exactly so somehow same as that asset. In this case, however, the risk is there because these assets are not identical. In such a case, that type of a risk is known as the basis risk. The second type of the risk is about the timing, that is the hedge may require contract to be closed out before the delivery time. Now, this is as a result of the timing. Say, for example, I've entered into a contract of say for example 3 months. The future contract that is available on this con is available now on the 3 months. But however, the hedge for me uh, uh, requires me to take the position in the contract only for the 2 months. However, the contract is available for 3 months, but I am in itself taking the position. The hedge requires me just to take the position of the 2 months only, but however, the contract is available for the 3 months. Or the alternative case will be like this: say, for example, I have to give the delivery in 3 months, but the contract is available only for 2 months. So, in both the cases, the mismatch of the timing creates a kind of a risk. So, this risk flows out of the mismatch of the timing. So because of this mismatch in the timing, it creates a kind of basis risk. The third one is that the hedger is uncertain to the exact date at which the assets are to be bought and sold, at which asset are to be bought and sold. Now, in this case, the hedger does not exactly know the date at which he is going to buy the asset and at which he is going to sell the asset. In such a scenario also creates a kind of a environment, a risky environment to enter into the hedge, and this type of the risk is known as a basic risk. Now, there are basis three reasons for the basis risk. One is the mismatch in the assets of the future contract and the assets that are to be hedged. The second one is the timing mismatch, and the third one is the uncertainty from the hedger's perspective about the timing at which he is going to buy or sell the asset. Now, let me talk about the concept of cross hedging, and let me now in this talk about how to actually calculate the hedge ratio. Now, what do we mean by the cross hedging? Now, when two different assets are when the assets are two assets are different in the hedge ratio, the ratio now let me first write down two assets are different in a hedge ratio. Now, the two different assets, we what we are actually doing, we are hedging the risk of one asset by taking the taking the position into another hedge into another asset. Oh, wait a second. Now, in this regard, we are hedging the risk of the one asset by taking the position into the for future contract that whose underlying is some other asset. Such type of hedging is known as the cross hedging. Now, the we say the optimal hedge ratio is, in theory, the optimal hedge ratio is said to be equal to 1. Now, reaching the optimal hedge ratio of 1 is never a possibility. Uh, However, what we try to do, we try to choose the minimum variance hedge ratio. What we try to do, minimum variance hedge ratio, because if we talk about the optimal hedge ratio of 1, that is near to impossible to achieve, and sometimes we can have the optimal hedge ratio of 1, but not actually, not rarely in practice, but however, in practical circumstances, what we try to do is to achieve the minimum variance hedge ratio. Now, uh, what do I actually mean by the minimum variance hedge ratio? It is the hedge ratio that minimizes the variance of the value of the hedged position. It is the value of hedge ratio that minimizes the variance of the hedged position. Now, whatever position we have hedged, so in order to be that should be of the lower variance, and that is known as the minimum variance hedge ratio. The minimum variance hedge ratio is calculated by taking the correlation between the two assets and the standard deviation of spot price divided by the standard deviation of the forward price. Now, this is the way how we actually calculate the variance of the minimum variance hedge ratio. Now, let me do an example over here. Say, for example, I am given that I am given the standard deviation of prices of a commodity that is equal to dollar 0.65, and I'm given the standard deviation of future prices of this commodity, that is equal to mm, say for example 0.81, and I'm giving the correlation between the two changes. Now I'm giving the correlation between the change in the price of this commodity and the change in the price of this. It is the correlation between these two is equal to 0.81. Now I've been asked to calculate the hedge ratio. Therefore the hedge ratio is equal to correlation coefficient multiplied by the what is the price of the standard deviation of the commodity divided by the what is the standard deviation of the future price. In this way I can calculate the hedge ratio, which is equal to 0.642. Now what does this 0.642 mean? It means that the size in future position should be 64.2% of the exposure. So whatever amount of the risk I am facing, I have to hedge it. I have to take the position in the future contract exactly about to 64.2%. In this way, we calculate the value on the value of the size of the hedge position, and the hedge position, that is the exposure that needs to be hedged, and the amount of the position that needs to be taken in the in the derivative contract. Now in this case 64.2 means that I have to take the amount, I have to take the 64.2% of the exposure and hedge it by the